Nigel Farage, good to talk to you, leader of the UK Independence Party, of course, Mr Farage. And what do you think then of what the Prime Minister said? Do you think he's neutralised the threat from your party? Are you going to see your voters and Conservative defectors to your party flocking back to them?
Well, I think what he's done, he's given a speech that would not have happened had UKIP not been campaigning, doing well in by-elections and rising in the polls. And I think effectively, by actually putting on the table, for the first time in 40 years, the idea that this country can have a national debate about whether we're in the European Union or whether we leave the European Union marks a fundamental change in the national debate in this country. The genie is out of the bottle. It's not going to be put back. And you know, for years we were told that the only people that wanted to leave were a few wild-eyed extremists in UKIP, and now there it is at the centre of the national debate in this country. So I'm very pleased that he's made the speech. However, it was a very pro-European speech, and all the way through he kept emphasising the good things that he thought the European Union had done. And what he wants people to do is to rally around the idea that the EU single market is absolutely vital for the future of this country, and that somehow that's about trade and not politics. And it's all very reminiscent of Harold Wilson doing exactly the same thing around the common market 40 years ago.
But he's posed the very question which I'm going to put to you for UKIP, isn't it? Would you have to let us know what you do. What happens if it all works from the Prime Minister's point of view? If he carries out these presumably protracted negotiations, he comes back with the rest of the EU more or less saying, well, OK, you can more or less just have the single market. We won't bother you with all the rest of it. He puts that to the people. Where does UKIP stand?
Well, look, I mean, the first thing to say is this is an attempt to kick the can down the road. If these issues were that important, then what we should be doing is having that renegotiation now and having a referendum before the next general election. I don't want to wait for 5 years to have a say on this. That's another 70 billion sterling in UK contributions. You know, we should be having the debate now. I don't think, in terms of the renegotiation, he's going to get very much. And it was very interesting that in his speech, he, apart from the impact of the 48-hour working week on the National Health Service, he didn't mention a single policy area directly that he'd like to renegotiate. I am certain of one thing. People in Brussels are in no mood to renegotiate at all. They may give us one or two little cosmetic adjustments. You know, perhaps we can catch herrings in a Solent or something. But I do not see a fundamental change in our relationship happening. But what I do see is the entire political class rallying around this single market phrase, as they did around the common market phrase all those years ago. And UKIP will be on their own. It'll just be us, with a few backbenchers pointing out that it's the single market that leads to political union and takes away the power of our parliament.
But just on that renegotiation, I mean, you do stand the chance of being re-marginalised, if you excuse me, reminding of all those years in the wilderness, because if the Prime Minister does get a substantial renegotiation and people like what they hear, your uncompromising leave whatever message would not be very popular, would it?
Well, on the 1st of January next year, we open our doors to 29 million people from Romania and Bulgaria. They can all come to this country, not just to work, but to access the benefit system too. What, Prime Minister, are you going to do about that?
That's your question then to him.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, by kicking the can down the road for up to 5 years, that doesn't deal with the immediacy of many of the threats and problems that our membership of the European Union presents us. This was a pro-EU speech dressed up with some anti-EU rhetoric. It was a way of trying to get UKIP off his back. It might work for a week or two, but the reality is these situations are not going to go away. And those of us that feel strongly on this issue want a full, free and fair referendum. The sooner, the better.
OK, but I mean, you're more or less saying in what you said there about Bulgarians and Romanians that we have to leave the EU. It's the only answer because of inward immigration from member states.
Well, you know, you cannot have your own immigration policy and be a member of the European Union. You cannot be a self-governing democracy and be a member of the European Union. You cannot negotiate trade deals with any of the other parts of the emerging world and be a member of the European Union. What Mr Cameron has tried to do is to defer all debate on this until after 2015. Frankly, that isn't good enough.
OK, Mr Farage, thank you very much indeed. Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP.